everybody, and welcome to episode 26 of the Shinesparkers podcast. I'm Amanda Van Heil. I'm going to be your host. I'm joined by my awesome friend Roy here from Shinesparkers, and we also have a wonderful new guest. This is Bryan Walker. He is the former senior director of development at Retro Studios and was the senior producer of Metroid Prime 2 and 3 and the new play control version of Metroid Prime. We also had an interview with Bryan earlier this year. So, Bryan, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself beyond just you worked at Retro Studios?
I've been an arcade rat going back to the 70s. I played the very first video game, Computer Space, became hooked, and then my addiction continued across a wide range of genres, of platforms, technology. Even though I was, when I was at college, when I was in the Army, still was a hardcore gamer, and so my collision with the games industry was inevitable. I joined in the early '90s and been doing this almost for 30 years now.
Very cool. Well, we are so excited to have you here. Can't wait to hear your insight on everything. So for the interview we had with Bryan earlier this year, we went into a lot of specifics on projects with Retro Studios, but this one we want to make it a little bit more laid back. So Bryan's got the freedom to go in depth as much as you want. So Bryan, for our first question, it's been over a decade since you left Retro Studios, but we were curious to hear a bit more about your time there and your experience with some of your coworkers and friends there. I mean, after being there for how long did you work at Retro again?
I was there almost 9 years.
9 years, yeah. So that definitely becomes like kind of a part of you. So can you just give us a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, I'd like to call out from the get-go that this is that my commentary is by no means pointing a finger at myself. I'm simply here as a representative of what a great group of people we had during my time at Retro Studios, how hardworking and passionate and talented these folks were. We did not have a superstar. We didn't have a prima donna. We didn't have a diva on the team. We just worked really well together. We were respectful and resourceful and resilient, my three favorite R's. And we, as a result, I think the quality of that environment, of that culture, really is reflected in the team. So please, I ask everyone to take a moment and understand and applaud the output of what was just a fantastic group of people. That said, I came in shortly after they had shipped Metroid Prime 1, and the studio, in fact, was working on a fast follow project that they had termed internally Metroid 1.5. I think it was called Metroid International with the corporate offices, but they decided against doing that just a day or two before I came on board. So we immediately shifted over to Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. The team at the time was only about 40 people. It's tiny by today's standards. Most games now have larger back-end engineering teams than 40 people, but it was a very, very well-proven team, intensely passionate, that had really undergone a hugely painful effort to get the original Prime out. So we had our work cut out for us, not only in getting our structures and processes in place, but also getting the type of culture that would help Retro Studios continue to grow over the coming years.
In our last interview with you, we asked about whether you had any anecdotes from your time working at Retro Studios. You mentioned Halloween costumes and the whiteboard of regret. So we're intrigued. Is there anything more you can tell us about that?
There were some real characters there at Retro, and Halloween brought out this sense of whimsy and really, in some respects, the wildly arrested level of development some of our team members had. The G.I. Joe was an awesome one. These guys, a lot of them grew up watching the G.I. Joe cartoons, playing with the action figures, and they, come Halloween time, they were dressing up as Cobra, dressing up as Cobra Commander, and various G.I. Joe characters. It was really awesome. One year we had Frank LaFuente, who was the lead engineer at the time. He dressed up as a really awesome Mario.
Oh,
He was that was a lot of fun. Oh, yeah. Also, Matt Manchester did a great Wolverine costume one time. The from the X-Men Origins Wolverine show with the sideburns and everything. That was an excellent costume.
oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, that sounds way cooler than what at my at my old job. I'll just put it this way: they had to change the dress code after Halloween
Oh,
because some people went a little too far. It was funny.
I went as Sheik for Halloween once,
Ooh,
like Zelda's alternate form.
yeah.
Not a single kid in the neighborhood knew who it was. And I had played Smash with them for like years. And they didn't know who it was. It was frustrating, but it was a lot of fun to wear.
All right. So, what's this whiteboard of regret? I've got to hear that.
One of the what kind of there's in game development, there's current us and future us, and there's a lot of conversations that talk about current us is making a decision, usually a tough decision, that future us will hate us for. And the whiteboard of regret was really kind of the way for future us to look back on just how dumb current us was being. And so we would very often have the board up, and over the course of the project, nobody touched the board. It was everything was in permanent Sharpie. And over the course of the project, we just accumulated quotes that would inevitably come back to haunt us. And I'll never forget Ryan Powell at the beginning of Donkey Kong Country Returns, as we were putting our metrics together. We were really intensely planning at the beginning. Pre-production is really kind of the homework that really kicks a project off properly. And as we were looking at the schedule and what we had in front of us, Ryan, during one of the leads meetings, said, come on, guys, we have more than enough time to do this game. and that one was probably the largest fun I think I've ever seen going up on the whiteboard for regret.
I love that. And honestly, that sounds like a really good way to just like foster community and really make it like a team thing, because that allows you to look back on everything.
Yeah, one of the processes in game development is always to go back and review postmortems, we call them. A variety of industries do them, but in the games industry in particular, they're very helpful. One is to really just take a look at what you can do better moving forward, what mistakes you made, why you made them, what you learned, and most importantly, how you apply that learning to the next project. The postmortems usually boil down to two things. One is we underestimated whatever it is, you underestimated. And the second one is you could communicate better. So no matter how good your communication, there was almost inevitably a situation where somebody crossed some wires and some miscommunication happened, and it wound up being a challenge that you had to navigate around. Our challenges with Nintendo were miscommunication was always something we had to be very careful of, mainly due to the translation issue. There was always a challenge of taking something from one of their translators away that we didn't have the proper context for. So really doubling down on our communication was something that we got consistently better at, especially as we worked more with the translators on the Nintendo side and also had our own translators in-house.
Talking about the whiteboard actually made me remember something I saw a while ago. I think at one point there was a tour of retro given by GameSpot. It was given to GameSpot, I should say. There was a whiteboard in that video, and I wonder if it's the same one now that I think of it. Just found a picture of it here.
That one, I remember that one. That was not the official whiteboard of regret. No.
Oh, different one?
Yeah, that one I think was in Mark Pacini's office, if I recall correctly.
Oh.
If you see ship it kind of up in the upper right corner, that was my stamp on Retro Studios. If something was good, that was ship it. That kind of became our mantra.
Kind of your book 'em Dano catchphrase.
That's a good one. Yeah, not a lot of people will recall that one, but yeah, that was it.
Nice.
Well, speaking of working with so many great people, what was it like working with Mr. Tanabe, the producer of the Metroid Prime series at Retro?
I'd like to call out one of the things right from the get-go about Mr. Tanabe is he was an incredibly hardworking person. A lot of people don't understand how many projects he was usually dealing with at once. He was supporting multiple projects, often very, very involved, and his amount of effort applied to each of them would constitute a full-time job just by himself. So he was doing this multiple times in parallel. So the amount of assistance that he provided us is really even more impressive when you consider he was doing the same for multiple other developers. Mr. Tanabe was a deeply thoughtful person. He was a protege of Mr. Miyamoto and took away a lot of the learnings that Mr. Miyamoto himself demonstrated, which was to, just be very mindful about the process, about the fundamentals of making a game. And I'm not talking about storyline or characters. When I say fundamentals, the minimum player loop. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Once you nail that player loop down, then you start blowing it up to include other things. But that degree of focus at the very core of a game is something that Mr. Tanabe brought forward and helped us instill in the games that we worked on with him.
Yeah, a bunch of interviews have talked about Mr. Tanabe and how much of a work ethic he has.
Yeah, Mr. Tanabe was he was a retro designer for all intents and purposes. The amount of input that he had, we may as well have given him a desk at the studio. What really I think I would hold up as the ultimate contribution that he provided to us was in the boss designs of not just Metroid but also the Donkey Kong games. He had the best sense of pacing and difficulty and mechanics for a boss encounters that I've ever seen. And we had really good designers and engineers working on boss designs at Retro Studios. But Mr. Tanabe was able to come in and guide the thought process, guide the progression of the encounter, the timing. He was truly a savant at boss design.
The bosses in the Prime series are probably some of the best of any game. I didn't know how involved he was with them, though, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I think my overall favorite boss still remains Quadraxis from Echoes. And Mike Wicken was the designer who really did the heavy lifting with Quadraxis. And I believe, if I recall correctly, Paul Tozer was the primary engineer behind that encounter. And Paul, we were really fortunate with Paul because he had a really strong design sense as well. And then Mr. Tanabe's guidance on top of that. That's probably one of the most well-crafted, challenging, and at times frantic boss encounter I've ever seen in a video game.
It is the biggest Metroid boss ever, even bigger than Kraid.
Yeah, we were doing Shadow of the Colossus before Shadow of the Colossus.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of bosses, what were some of your favorites, along with favorite environments and characters all across the Metroid Prime series? I know Quadraxis is great. What were some others that you really liked?
I would hold up the Gandreda encounter out of Corruption. One, because it's not obvious to the player. It's a hugely, hugely variable boss. It's not obvious to the player how much work went into the Gandreda encounter, but that's good because you're not supposed to know that. You're just supposed to know that it's an incredibly challenging, vibrant experience that plays to the personality of the Gandreda character that we were working with. Of course, they came out of the Metroid Prime Hunters, but I think that one is really one of the more memorable ones I've had.
That was a fun fight.
Gandreda is so cool.
Yeah, that was one of the most enjoyable parts of Corruption is working with those other bounty hunters as boss encounters.
I did wonder about Gandreda because you mentioned how I guess making that fight was very complex. Specifically, because she jumps around a lot and flips and is very acrobatic. What went into that?
Well, a lot of people would not immediately think of the complexities of the AI that's required, and not just the complexities of the AI to have such a fast-moving, agile opponent, but also the complexities of the environmental design to support that kind of encounter. That's we equally blessed. Gosh, what a great group of environment artists and designers that we have. The designers were able to put into place what we call the blue rooms, the initial structures and geometry of the encounter in a way that supported the Gandreda abilities, especially the acrobatics. And then our environment artists came in and overlaid those with ways, especially regarding the lighting and the overall aesthetics of the environment, that also played very much to the Gandreda character.
I'm imagining just like watching something like that happen, like with motion capture or something, just seeing like somebody actually performing all that.
Well, and that's something that we did not use motion capture in anything that we did at Retro Studios for the Prime or the DK series.
Right.
Yeah.
Now motion capture and full performance capture, in fact, with facial motion, fingers, hands, etc. That's almost a given in anything that you do. But literally everything that we were doing was basic IK and keyframe animation. And that, especially to do that by hand, really calls out the skills of our animation team, Derek Babkowski, Will Bate, Steven Safros, etc., and the rigging as well, Dax Pelota. What I really liked about these guys is they always exceeded expectations with something. We had the spec, we had the design of exactly what we were looking for, and they were always able to add a tweak, a little flourish, a little extra personality that wasn't required. But that extra 5% that they would always put in just was not just indicative of the work ethic and the passion they had, but it helped motivate the entire team. When they saw their peers stepping up and giving it some extra love, then they followed that example. That was the kind of, pardon the use of the snarky term, the synergistic creative environment that we had there.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I love hearing just the creation of all that, because I always love hearing about how boss characters are made and all of that, and especially one as cool as Gandreda, because she's just so awesome. And, you made a really good point talking about how, now a lot of things are like motion capture and performance capture, but there's something about when they're done by hand and like animated that way, it's like there's a life in them that you don't get anymore. You get really cool graphics when it comes to performance capture, and you get an incredible like performance from the actor, but like from an artistic standpoint of like seeing the character, I don't know, it's like there's like a life in it or something. And I think it just has to do with like the animators and producers and everybody just kind of putting themselves into the game while they're making it.
Yeah, and there's always, there's just that extra whimsy or the extra flourish that a human couldn't possibly achieve.
Exactly.
You're just not going to have somebody in a bubble suit making these superhuman type of moves. They're going to be limited by their physical capabilities. With the hand animation, you can put that extra emphasis on a particular stance that you're not going to get out of a human. So that's why I think our animators in particular have to be called out. They were so good at giving the characters just that little extra touch.
Absolutely.
So, having worked on the Prime trilogy and also the Donkey Kong Country games and Mario Kart 7, what would you say was your favorite title to work on while at Retro?
This is not going to play well with your Metroid fan base, but
that's okay.
DK, Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii.
Still a very solid game.
Yeah.
And the reason
we have a shared fan base.
The reason it's my favorite is not just because what it represented as a commercial project. It was an extremely successful game, highly rated, highly received, but what it represented to the team and the cultural evolution of what was a studio hardwired to make a very, very specific type of game. And our ability to adapt and evolve and improve to step way out of our comfort zones. I mean, it wasn't one step. I mean, this is like bungee jumping with nothing strapped to your ankles. Just going completely out of the box and embracing a huge opportunity in the midst of transitioning, shortly, having recently lost Mark, Todd, and Jack when they formed Armature. And everybody came out of that process far more confident in not just the studio, not just our ability as a team, but as individuals to stare down the barrel of what could have been perceived to be an insurmountable obstacle or incredible adversity and just quit, just roll up and give up. But instead, we grabbed an opportunity and knocked it out of the park. I'm sorry, I get a little emotional when I think about that, because I remember how frightened people were when we kicked it off, when Mark and Todd and Jack moved on. And we still talk to these guys to this day, great guys. But when they moved on, they left this void, and seeing how people initially were just terrified of the unknown, and then leaning over to each other and finding support and finding the encouragement within the team to grow. And that it's easily the best comeback story of my career.
Well, never apologize for being emotional. That's what we want to. We want to hear the really cool stories and like what really like stuck to you. So that's what we love hearing. Well, over the past few years, especially in recent times, Metroid Prime Trilogy for Switch has been heavily rumored. I mean, we probably get those rumors going around every 3 months or so, it feels like.
There was another rumor last week.
That's right. There was one. Like, I've kind of just gotten to the point anytime where I see one, I go, that's nice. And just keep scrolling. But there was one comment made by Mike Wicken, the senior designer of the Prime trilogy, that said in 2021 that he was skeptical it would happen, stating that converting the controls of Prime 3 to normal controls would be a huge effort. So in theory, what challenges would a team have to address to make this possible? And I mean, do you think that might happen? I know you might not be able to answer do you think that might happen, because I don't want to get you in trouble for saying any like speculation or anything.
There are a whole lot of folks still in retro that I was with back in the day, and the best thing about these folks is they're professionals. They are never going to leak something to me, and I'm a professional as well, and I'm never going to dig into them. Regardless of how much we trust people, it's just not done. It's bad form. So I don't know. I have no idea. I understand the public announcements, and I understand how people are doing on a personal level. But as far as what they're working on and the status of it, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Well, like you were saying, when people leak games and all of that, it's so disrespectful to the artists and producers and writers and everything. Like, let it come out on its own time. So I get what you're saying there. It's like, people don't just say this sort of thing, and it's out of respect for one another.
And that's something that I want to call out from personal experience. And I believe it was E3 2009. They announced that Donkey Kong Country returns at the Nintendo pre-show, and somebody leaked it the weekend before. And we had been super, super careful about keeping it internal, about being discreet with our communications. And we were so excited about blowing people away in the show, I think it was Monday or Tuesday before the E3, about taking the lid off and showing it to the public for the first time, and it leaked. And the whole studio was just in this depression when that happened. We had a great show. It was hugely well received. But the fact that we weren't able to fill the Nintendo mission to surprise and delight the player just with the initial announcement really bothered us. We were crestfallen when that happened.
Oh, I'm sure. Because, I mean, I feel like that's even worse than spoiling somebody's surprise party, saying, hey, they're throwing you a surprise party, by the way, or, hey, by the way, your mom's getting you a car for Christmas. Thought you should know. And, she didn't get the chance to do the nice big reveal. It's just, everybody listening, be respectful to developers in the story.
And that's one of the things I'm seeing is as a problem with social media, streaming and so forth, are this constant attempt to one up other streamers to get that edge, to get more clicks, likes, etc. And they're resorting to just a lot of nonsense in many respects. So, making up quote rumors that they themselves made up just to try to get a response, or just to try to get extra views for what is almost certainly an entirely unfounded nonsense.
It's like they're acting like middle schoolers for like the whole world to see, basically.
Yeah. The ones that pretend that they have some kind of inside sources, no.
There are YouTubers who will take some, like, to use Metroid Prime 4 as an example. Retro occasionally posts jobs for, new positions, and they look at the description and they sort of extrapolate from there. Oh, you want a story designer who's going to work on cutscenes. That means it's going to have a massive story, and they spend the whole video could be like a minute long, but they make it go on for 15 minutes talking about completely other different things. Mention that in like, I don't know, 10 minutes in, very briefly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Some of the forensics that they're trying to apply to what is a very innocuous development or posting is, on one hand, is a source of amusement, but it's also a source of irritation.
Yeah, because when a video like that gets made, someone new to sort of gaming culture or game development might think, oh, this is massive, whatever. And then from there, rumors spread. Because whatever jobs are being advertised could be for Prime 4, could be for something completely different. We don't know. And speculating like that is pointless, and it just misleads people.
Well, thank you so much for giving us some insight on your time at Retro Studios. It was just really interesting to hear everything and to hear just your passion from making the games. It definitely comes through. So now we're going to move on to our next topic, which is the corrupted bounty hunters, and we are going to imagine a scenario in which the three bounty hunters, Rundus, Gore, and Gandreda, are assisting the Galactic Federation against Dark Samus and the Space Pirates. So, like, what their journey might be up until they met their fate, or maybe origin stories, or any other types of missions. What do we think of that?
I remember reading a fan fiction story a long time ago, which was pretty decent for fan fiction. And with the exception of one sentence in Gandreda's chapter, it's a very good work. It imagined their origin stories up to corruption, and then sort of what happened as they were falling under Dark Samus's control, and then after. For Rundus, who seems to be this very badass, laid-back hunter, I imagine he had a whole bunch of adventures before corruption, like different bounty hunting missions where he would, I don't know, assassinate mercenaries or recover artifacts. And I'm imagining a sort of action flick style story with him. He's just so cool, especially when he's on the elevator. Hey, relax. We're the good guys. Justice will prevail and all that stuff. Right, Samus? Gandreda is another really interesting character because she seems to play a lot of practical jokes, and she's always very playful or even flirtatious, so she could have a lot of fun. What if she is this political operative somewhere where she infiltrates, I don't know, the office of someone she doesn't like, and she finds out all their deepest, darkest secrets and then exposes them? Maybe that could be cool for her. And Gore, he's one of those bark is worse than their bite characters, I think. I mean, he's vicious toward his enemies, but the logbook said that he had a heart of gold, and he donates all of his bounties to underprivileged people. So I imagine he goes on missions where he can be a bit more destructive, whereas stuff with Samus probably requires a bit more finesse. So, for instance, if they need him to go and clear out an entire planet of pirates or something easy to kill, not like Metroids where you have to have ice beam and missiles.
I think I would probably want like an origin story.
Yeah.
Maybe like in the so I know it sounds silly, but like have the three of them in the game together, like kind of like it's Kingdom Hearts and Birth by Sleep. because you have like the 3 different routes you can play. You can play as each one, and then like the story like kind of builds on each other, and then you learn all about them, and then like you get to empathize with them a bit more. And I think that's just really cool because I love anything that really builds on characterization, because like I have an acting background, so I really like understanding the characters and trying to figure out where they come from and why they do certain things. So I'd really like an origin story where you get to do the different routes, one for each one, but then they still like kind of work together at times.
That would be super cool.
I'm really interested to see how the team, or even if the team, develops more of these bounty hunter stories outside of Samus. There's an interesting challenge here in that the Metroid Prime series is based on solitude. It's based on a lone hero and a environment that is you're very much in isolation. And by introducing some of these other bounty hunters, that sense of isolation is dispelled to some degree. But to what degree? And how do these other bounty hunters, when they're not in the sphere of influence of Samus, what are these other bounty hunters doing? And how do they go about that? There's so much more to explore there. I'm really excited to see if Prime 4 or any of the other future Primes or future Metroid titles investigates them further.
I hope so, because they're too cool of characters to just relegate them to one single game. I want to see more of them.
There's always this kind of undercurrent of rivalry with Silex and Samus in particular, and Silex is, his motivations are, other than being a rival of Samus, does that make him evil? Does that make him chaotic neutral? What are we looking at is how he operates. I think Silex to me is one of the more intriguing opportunities with the bounty hunters.
Yeah. We had an interview with the story designer of Hunters a few years ago, and he says that there is a great backstory with a lot of layers written up for Silex. Didn't tell us what that was, of course, but I'm really intrigued to see what that is. I just hope that, whatever Silex's story is, it should cause us to think. We should be a little bit conflicted about Silex, maybe.
Yeah, agreed.
Whether he's evil or not, or, what his motivations are.
Yeah, that's really intriguing. I like blank canvases like that.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to go into the mailbag. So last episode, we asked you guys, what kind of additional downloadable content would you like to see added to the Metroid Dread game? Metroid Theorist says different character modes, even if it's just another playable character besides Samus. Think Richter mode in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This was a recurring feature in post-Symphony of the Night games. That's a good idea, and that's kind of similar to like the idea of having the different bounty hunters and you getting to do the different paths.
DLC where you play as Ravenbeak?
I would play that. I would do that path.
I would love that.
All right. Calvin and Hobbies says a randomized mode would be cool, but pretty basic. What I'd like is some kind of multiplayer mode, maybe multiple Samus exploring ZDR cooperatively or competitively, or a whole separate deathmatch thing. The combat feels so good, it would be cool to use it against other players.
I'm dating myself badly here, but there was an Atari Lynx game called Slime World back in the 80s. And it was a side-scrolling platformer shooter with multiplayer in it. And I am embarrassed to tell you how many hours my friends and I spent in that game. Yes, seeing that kind of treatment done with Metroid Dread would be awesome.
I actually have an Atari Lynx.
I have 3 of them.
Oh, wow.
Still.
Impressive.
You have to bring your own multiplayer with that one.
Gotcha. Oh, here you go, Roy. Hiba Hussein 14 says a playable section where you play as Ravenbeak and setting up the events for Dread, like reprogramming the Emmy and Atom and scattering power-ups across ZDR.
Nice. Great minds think alike. Add to that a conversation tree where he just thumps his chest and is a big old narcissist, because throughout the whole game he was telling Samus, you can't beat Ravenbeak except your helplessness. He's too strong for you.
Yep. All right, we got one more. Looks like from Deadweight here. A new area to test your platforming skill to the max, like Mario 3D World's Champion Road or Hollow Knight's Path of Pain. This is the most movement-focused Metroid yet, and it fit right in. So that'd be kind of, I guess, like Dread mode, where you just can't take any damage.
Well, you can take damage, but you can't make a mistake where you have to start over.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because I just started playing Celeste a couple of days ago, and oh my god, it's not easy.
No, I have not played that one, but it looks difficult.
It's fun. It is a good challenge.
As long as it's fun, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
All right, well, you guys, for our next mailbag question, we ask you, if you could only choose one Metroid game and all the rest disappeared from existence, which one would you save?
Oh, this is evil.
Oh, that's a mean question. Hey, guys, I did not make that question up. I'm just going to put that out there that it was not me.
No, that one's all Darren.
That is all Darren. Don't look at me.
I'm gonna go corruption. It's got to be corruption. Dread is great, but corruption has a special place in my heart.
It is the last Prime game to date, and it was I would argue the pinnacle of the series.
Yeah, it's not fair to compare the 2D and 3D Prime versus Dread. Yeah, entirely different types of games.
Yeah, it really isn't.
But if we're getting down to just brutal process of elimination, that's my story. I'm sticking with it.
Well, it's a good choice.
Well, Bryan, thank you so much again for talking with us. It was so great hearing from you. Where can people find you or get in touch with you if they have something they want to see or anything you may be working on you'd like to share?
Yeah, they're welcome to email me, walker34@aol.com. Please don't spam me.
Awesome. Thank you. You guys don't spam them, especially not with stupid stuff. Well, it was so much fun talking with everybody. Thank you all for listening. And of course, you can check out our website, shinesparkers.net, and follow us on social media. I'm Amanda Van Heil. We'll see you next mission.
See you next mission.
See you next mission.
Can you tell us a little bit about who all, just what it was all, the whole, let me try that again, I'm so sorry. There was the one comment made by Mike, and I'm sorry, is it Wyken or Wiccan?
Wiccan.
Okay, I thought so, but I want to double check. Well, thank you so much for telling us about your background at I called it Metro. I was about to call it Metroid, and then it became Metro Studios. So at Retro, we'll try that again. So there was one comment made by Mike Wiccan, the senior director. There was one comment made by Mike Wiccan, the senior designer. Well, thank you so much for giving us the insight of your time at Retroid. I almost did it again. Oh my gosh.
Retroid.
Showing their journey up until they made their fate, or maybe their origin stories of why they became enough to take on... Wait, what the... I'm just reading what this says, and I thought it said a question. Awesome. Thank you. You guys don't spam him, especially not with stupid stuff. He does not want weird pictures of Samus every day.
Oh, no. Oh, yikes, yes. And we have seen some.
I don't doubt it.
If a character exists, that exists.
I'm just imagining somebody just drawing Samus's feet or something.
Yeah.
I made the mistake.
Oh, no.
So when you go to Disney World, there's a style called Disney bounding, and that's where you dress up as a character.
Oh, boy.
I made the mistake of typing in Princess Peach Bound. And, well, it has been so much fun getting to talk with everybody. Thank you all for listening. It was so great. Let me try that again. Well, it has been so much fun getting to talk with everybody. And, of course, thank you all for listening. You can...
The Shinesparkers podcast is edited by Darren Kerwin, Stephen Wells, and Giulio Bruschini, with music from Maserati. If you enjoyed the podcast, You can download more episodes at shinesparkers.net/podcast. You can also listen to us on Spotify and other podcast platforms. For the latest Metroid news, community features, and exclusive content, you can find us at shinesparkers.net, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. See you next mission.